in jihadi organisation.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4 or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe for free.
My name is Carlton King, and welcome to the Black Spy podcast, the show which shines a light on the hitherto secret world, and by the way, it still is secret, of secret intelligence, national security, and armed governmental personal protection operations. What we try and do in the show is connect that with geopolitics and the real world in which we all live, so it can give you an understanding of how your world actually functions. Today's guest, and I'm going to actually call him a super guest, because for one simple reason, what I've learned through my time in the secret world, in any aspect of it, from protection to espionage to terrorism, nothing works without money. And the bottom line is that this man is a man who holds the money or plays with the money. Now, my understanding of a banking system, of shares or whatever else, is probably the layman's understanding, which has always been that money comes in, it goes into some sort of amorphous circle, and then is spread out somehow. Many other people's understanding is even worse than mine. It's been that it sits in a bank account, and when somebody needs to borrow something from it, it's paid out from a vault to those people, you know, in a kind of way. Today, Pete Smith is going to tell you what really happens. So once again, let's get educated and entertained. Pete, how are you doing, my friend?
Very good. Good morning, Carlton. Thanks for the very nice intro. Very nice and generous introduction.
It's not generous though, is it, my friend? You are the man. You are the man. Pete,
At times.
That's what I like to hear. No modesty on this show, Pete. No modesty, my friend.
Okay, great.
Okay. So what I'd like to do first and foremost is people can hear if you come from the United Kingdom. I know I have people listening in Australia, the United States, and wherever else in the world. But if you came from the United Kingdom, you'd hear straight away that Pete is from Liverpool, the Fab Four and all of that. And I just want to know how a Liverpool guy ends up in what was once, and Pete, you may tell me, is still the number one trading place in the world, maybe, and how that works. How does I'm guessing, a kind of working class lad end up in at the height of power? How does that work, Pete?
Well, you're right. I am originally from Liverpool, and how do you get from there to here? I would normally say, how long have you got? So I'll try and give it a slightly potted version. But yeah, I come from an area of Liverpool that was probably not the most affluent, to be pleasant. And when I left school, I went round the various stockbroking firms, basically asking for a job. And the only reason I picked stockbrokers, by the way, was not a huge desire to work in the market, because I didn't really have a clue what the market was. But I just had a basic understanding that the people that I saw with money and wealth, and at the time, Porsche 911s and maybe Ferraris and all of these sort of trappings to success, but you saw in various films and stuff, people seemed to be something to do with banks and stockbroking. So I got a job in a stockbroker in Liverpool, actually delivering the post. Believe it or not, I was the post boy.
But Pete, just one, you're obviously a bright lad. You weren't not bright. So in terms of your education, were you grammar school, or what was the circumstance there with that? Just to stop you.
I was grammar school.
You were bright. Okay.
And I did all my exams 2 years early. I did them when I was 14 instead of 16 first round.
Got you. So Pete, please, none of this false. Well, it's not false. None of this modesty. You were a bright fella, and that's what drove you into this game. Yeah. But please continue, Pete. I just want to know that.
Yeah, I was, was pretty much just a star performer at school. Mathematics being my favorite subject, still is.
Yeah.
So when I went to work when I got an interview in a stockbroking firm, I told them what I'd done and did my exams all early, and basically I'm going to take over your company in a minute, and all of this real young man's testosterone-ridden bravado. But what I did say to them is, I need to know what exams I can do within your organization so that I can, get to the top of the tree. I guess most people didn't ask them that question.
Yes.
So they gave me a job. I was 16. I didn't go on to further education because I had a job.
Yes.
And I took out a bank loan to buy a car, but I didn't buy a car. I paid for my stockbroking exams. Thus, at the age of 18 and a week, I became the youngest ever stockbroker in the United Kingdom. Whether that still stands, I don't know, because I've never checked. Maybe I should. So there I was, 18, in a stockbroking firm in Liverpool, which for people who don't know Liverpool, most people have probably heard of it, but you don't know it is a relatively small town, northwest of England. Population probably 750,000 at a guess. It's not the hotbed of wealth in the United Kingdom, but there is some wealth there. There was 5 stockbrokers in the region, and I became a dealer for one of them. And the day I became a dealer, with pretty disrespectful to my employees, I started looking for jobs in London. The very day, and it was quite comical when people were calling me up, headhunters at the time. This is 1986. Yeah. This was when Big Bang was in full swing. Automated trading was coming in, and you'd be on the phone to a headhunter, and they'd say, "Well, how long have you been trading?" Well, 4 days. And you say, so you say 4 years? I said, no, only qualified on Tuesday.
Brilliant.
So I moved to London, and to put that into perspective, I actually moved in 1987. My income in Liverpool, let's say, was X. My starting income as an 18-year-old in London was 5X.
So Pete, tell me something with that. When you were doing these calls and everything like that, were people then looking at you and saying, no, he's got nothing? Or was it the Wild West and it was open to anybody who was a thruster and could make their way through? Was the climate
it was the old banker and barrow boy. There's only 2 types of people on the market: the banker, the Rothschilds, the people that came from family wealth that sort of were grandfathered into the market. Mm-hmm. Or you have what they colloquially call the barrow boy.
Yes. The
young, athletic, let's go for it, determined individual. I was more the latter.
Right.
And at the time, you've got to remember, 1986, the government employed a guy called Professor Ernest Gower, who I was fortunate enough to meet a couple of years later. And Professor Gower said that the United Kingdom was finished. London, as a financial services center, was over. United States, Hong Kong, Singapore to a small degree, and definitely Tokyo, they'd overtook London as a place to raise capital, take your company public, move money, foreign exchange. And as a direct result of Thatcher's Conservative government in the 80s, Gower was tasked with changing the entire landscape of United Kingdom financial services as we knew it.
So when Gower said it was over, he wasn't saying it was over and we can't do anything about it. He was saying if we don't do something about it, we won't get back. Is that more like? Yeah, right.
Correct. And the sweeping changes that he brought in were what I rode the coattails of, really, because he deregulated banking, he deregulated market making, and he deregulated stockbroking, which meant that there was a plethora of investment coming in, mainly from the States, but all the big Japanese banks moved in. And thus there was a shortage of people who were bright,
but
people
Pete,
who were qualified.
Sorry, mate, because I'm trying to think like me, who knows nothing.
Yeah.
And for the listeners, why would just because we do this deregulation, why would people move to London? Were other people regulated and we were deregulated, or how did that work?
He just changed regulation. Some of the rules and regulations in the early 80s were archaic. They'd been there for nearly a century. A very small example is stockbroking commissions were fixed. So consequently, in the United States, 1987, you could buy and sell a stock for $10 a trade. In England, it was 1.65% plus 0.5% stamp duty. So your punter, if you like, your client, your customer, your investor, the only people who would invest in the UK were British people because it was easy.
Gotcha.
An American thinks, he's trading a couple of $100,000 and he's going to get charged $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, or he can do it for a tenner.
Yeah.
Back home in Texas or whatever he may be.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, makes sense.
It was, and Gower pretty much single-handedly changed from what it was to what it is today.
Yeah. Interesting. And is that good from your perspective? Has that been good for the country, or is it swings and roundabouts?
Yeah, I would say it's been monumental,
right,
for the country.
Okay.
Tag that to the new issues, the denationalisation that the government brought in the late 80s, British Telecom, British Gas, and the whole host of other ones. All of a sudden, everybody became very aware of the market. Everybody became very aware that you don't have to invest your money in a guy who knocks at the door and asks for £10 a week or whatever it may be.
Prudential.
The Prudential, the Co-op. All of a sudden, everybody became sophisticated. Everybody had stockbroking accounts all of a sudden. Everybody would buy British Telecom being the big one. British Gas was the follow-on. And as you would probably remember yourself, Carlton, from those days, everybody spoke about British Telecom and British Gas.
I thought they were undervalued, though. And from my side, and this is what we do on the show, I was at the time, 87, I was doing some protection work in Special Branch. And of course, as you know, we protect only the very most senior politicians, basically cabinet ministers, and not all the cabinet even in the UK. So what was happening is we were doing people, say the Home Secretary, whatever, who were going into the city every day nearly for lunches, right? And they were being fed lunches, as we were as well, being fed lunches in the city because these deals were going on. And I can remember one guy who didn't get protection, but he was in charge of the trade and industry. And one week I'd seen him basically in the meetings that we'd have where the minister, the secretaries of state would go in and meet him. And the next minute he's in the city, basically having put this trade out at the price it was, he's then some sort of non-executive chairman. So there was a question to my mind always as to how sound that was. You set your pricing and next minute, 2 weeks later, of both companies, he's like a non-executive chairman.
Well, if you remember, I know this is not to harp on about British Telecom, but BT came out at £1.30 or £1.35 a share, but only 50p was due on day one,
yes,
which was to attract everybody. The second that stock opened, because I was a dealer on it, it opened at 92p.
Right.
And most people just stacked it. So in other words, they bought it and sold it same day.
Gotcha.
So instantly, as soon as BT opened, every order on my desk was a sell. So it created, well, it did still raise £4 billion for Treasury.
Mm-hmm.
There was still an awful lot of money in 1987 or 86, whenever it was, £4 billion. And it was said that it was priced low just to bring retail people into the market,
right,
to bring people, to make people aware that you don't have to give it all to Prudential, to mention a name we mentioned earlier, or to M&G or to anybody else. Actually, you can do a little bit of this yourself.
Yes.
British Gas wasn't such a home run, but the same thing happened. British Gas raised 5.6 billion, and they went at the same price as BT, but the upswing on day one was, let's say, 20%, I think. Whereas everybody was complaining, wow, 20%, but they wanted 80% all of a sudden.
But the smart people kept it, did they then? The smart people kept it, or the smart people sold it straight away? What was the smart move?
The smart people kept it.
Yeah.
But it was almost akin to day trading today, as it's become.
Gotcha.
Get in, get out. And it just created, those particular issues created an era of greed.
Yes. And
they were the main contributory factor, because everywhere you went, what do you do for a living? I'm a broker. Oh, what do you think of telecom? What do you think of gas? God, do you not have any other subject matter? But it created a nation of greed. as we all know, the late 80s, early 90s, even after the great stock market crash of October 1987, there was still this greed fever kicking around in the UK. And it all went back to Ernest Gower's restructure of the financial markets. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation now, because I probably wouldn't be in this position.
Yeah. So the thing is, we made a system which functioned well for the country in many ways. Am I right in saying that, Pete?
Yep.
It functioned well for the country. But what it did do, apparently from what I'm seeing, is it made a section of the public wealthy, the smart people. But did it in a sense make the distance between the wealthy and the poor greater? Or did you think it ran about the same?
I would say it bridged a little bit of that gap.
It bridged it. Interesting.
I would say it did. I think you found, in particular, from my career has been split into many, many different segments. But my early career was in Liverpool to start with, and London to follow. Mm-hmm. In Liverpool, the amount of times I got an order to sell 200 or 400 shares of British Telecom, I cannot remember, because that was the allocations. If you applied for 10,000 shares, you may got 400. So it was always 2s, 4s, or 8. So your average person would be members of my family would be buying these shares and selling them and sticking a few quid in the pocket, basically. In London, the difference was people were waiting for it to list at 92p and still just buying millions and millions of shares, but they were long-term holders. For those people, I don't think the wealth changed, but there was certainly an awful lot of people that made quite decent amounts of money that normally would not be exposed to this type of investment.
Gotcha. But does that then, how does that explain the fact that when I was talking to people about you coming on the show and get that their understanding of this whole world was practically zero? As I said in the intro, I mean, a lot of people still understood that, your money goes into the bank vaults, and when you borrow it from the bank that sits in the vaults. They don't know what happens, the magic that happens. They don't know what that magic is. And I'd kind of like you to explain what that magic is. What is the magic?
Well, I think we've gone a bit underground again, whereas it was very underground 70s, 80s. No one had a clue. 80s, 90s, it all became high profile, all the films, Wall Street, and all these sort of stuff that really glamorized that aspect of it, which is, the top 0.001% or the bottom 0.001%, because he was crooked in the end, but that's the story. But now with things like HFTs, high frequency traders, now people are just moving numbers, and you really need to have a PhD in some form of macroeconomics to move these numbers and to create the wealth that is being created. And we're seeing it in a different way in the crypto industry.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about crypto.
The crypto industry just leaves me shaking my head and scratching my head at times, because some of the wealth that is created and the industry that's spun off from the cryptos is bizarre. But how many people understand it? I mean, even less, a smaller handful. So I think in the market now, what we have is people are a bit more aware. But as I said, there's companies in New York that I'm aware of that move their offices closer to NASDAQ. NASDAQ being one of the main electronic exchanges, North American security dealer system, so that the signal of the prices coming out of NASDAQ would get to them a millionth of a second before anybody else. A millionth.
I've been in the NASDAQ, Pete. I was in there because I can't remember who it was, might have been foreign secretary there, whatever. And I was speaking to the guy who was head of security there, an ex-NYPD guy, very senior guy in NYPD, New York Police Department. And basically he told me about a situation when, for a second, the system went down. And something like, he said $1 trillion or something at the time was wiped off the system.
Per second.
Fact,
even worse than I thought.
This is fact, Pete. And you know what? Nobody knew what happened. That simple. Nobody knew what happened. Money's gone. Nobody knows what's happened. That was it.
I mean, it is crazy, isn't it? When you're talking about
unbelievable.
that volume. And when I was a broker, going back to the early conversation, if I was trading with you, it'd be open outcry. I'd walk over to you, I'd ask you for a price, you'd give me the price, we'd haggle, I'd deal, I'd walk away. That whole process. I mean, and if there was more than one person trying to deal, by the way, you formed a queue. That whole process could take a minute.
Yeah.
If there was a good football game yesterday, might take 2 because you're a bit of nattering.
Sorry, Pete, what was the haggle? What's the haggling bit? Sorry, Pete, because I don't understand. Again, I'm thinking like all this. How do you haggle? You've got your price. How do you haggle? I don't understand.
Well, for every stock, there's a two-way price. So, for example, use the favourite of British Telecom.
Yep.
They were 92p when they come out. That means that they were probably 92 to 95. Right. So if you were a seller, you'd sell it at 92. If you were a buyer, you'd buy it at 95.
Gotcha.
Now flip that to the other side. If you're the broker, you're actually buying it at 92 and selling it at 95.
That's your profit.
Because that's the difference. So let's say I'm a buyer of 100,000 shares. The stock is 92 to 95. So I can sell it at 92, buy it at 95. I might go into the market and start trying to bid it at 94. So I'm making it look more attractive for the seller.
Yes.
Because he's going to get 92 off my competitor. He get 94 off me. But that's only because really deep down, I'm a buyer.
Right.
So you have this haggle, maybe 94 bidding 100, 93 and a half bidding 50, points out in 55. And you go through all of this. Really deep down, you both know what you're both trying to do.
Right, yeah. And that's done in seconds. That's done quickly. That's you just talking, bang, 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 bang.
It's just talking. But it still takes 20 seconds.
Yes.
30 seconds. And even when screen trading came in the UK, which was all the prices were on a screen, but you still had to make a phone call. That took a similar time. And then when completely automated trading came in. So now, I mean, I trade for myself now, as you know, I can do a trade in 5 seconds. But when you're talking, a system is down for a second and there's $1 trillion gone.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what he said.
And that's where I feel it's gone underground again.
Gotcha.
The myth is back again, really. When you invest your money invariably in a bank, and they will then invest that money into whatever they see fit, or you'll invest it into a fund, traditionally in this country, in the UK, a unit trust. And that unit trust will buy the holdings that it buys very much in a traditional manner. Mm-hmm. So if it was a UK equity, the Prudential, just use the same name again, there was the Prudential UK equity fund that would probably split across the top 50 UK companies. And you put in your pound and they split that across the 50 companies on the ratios that their fund is built on. Yes. And they have full discretion. They decide to sell Rio Tinto and buy Rolls Royce, that's up to them. Mm-hmm. And you trust them to do that. And you normally pay them 1.5% per annum for the privilege of doing that. When I was in the market on the floor in the late 80s, that was cutting edge. Now it's archaic, but it still provides a method of getting into the market.
So how are you making your profits then? I can see how the Prudential made their profits because they were making a profit on doing the splits for you and getting the best out of it and then taking their cut. But how are you making your profits then?
Well, you make it in two ways. You either make it on dealing fees. So you come in to buy your 100,000 BP, BT, whatever, and we charge you a commission. Right. Or we broker the trade. So again, back to my example of BT, it's 92.5. There's almost 3% in the middle of that.
Yes.
There's 2.8% is sitting in the middle of that deal. Now, if I was fortunate enough to do 100,000 each side, i.e. buy 100 and sell 100, I've probably made, best part of 2.8% on that transaction. Mm-hmm. And some stocks are priced much wider, depends on the volume. If a stock trades all the time, the spread will be 0.5% or less, even tiny bips, 0.01. If a stock doesn't trade very often, so thus the risk of liquidating your position is higher, you might get away with a 5 or 8% spread, and you take the middle out of it. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, they come in to buy the stock. They're just paying the ask price, which invariably could well be 5 or 8% higher than what they could get them for if you were a market professional. Gotcha. But that's how the market professional makes his money.
So I could see, just looking at that, tell me if I'm wrong, my little brain's thinking, well, hang on, if my mate is the one that's buying and I'm the one that's selling, we can work this together.
You can. And that's where lots of these trading platforms have now sprung up, where people like TradeStation, if anyone's ever come across them, they're probably one of the biggest, I think. You can just put your own bid and ask on the screen and hope that someone fills it. The problem is you're limiting your trade to someone who has the same system that you have. And there's tons of systems. So if I'm on TradeStation and you're on XE, we're never going to meet in the middle. It's a bit like Betfair for the gambling industry. You know, Betfair took the gambling industry from an average 20% book gain. In other words, if someone's bet £10 over the course of a day, a bookmaker knew he was probably going to make £2, 20% roughly. Now a book is running at less than 1% because of Betfair. Doesn't matter what system you're on, who you bet with, you can use Betfair to aggregate your bets, very much similar to the market, and cut out the middleman.
So it's the volume they're living off.
It's the volume.
Yeah.
And interestingly, when you talk about where does the money actually go, when I first started to work in London, which was October 1987, just before the crash, the people that I worked for, the individual that I was directly reporting to was showing me around Threadneedle Street, Bank of England, London Stock Exchange, and all the rest of it. And he said to me, you see all this? This is almost mythical. That it's because of these tall buildings and because of all the imagery that we understand of Bank Station, Bank of England, people have confidence putting the money into the market. The fact is, half the time, the money went somewhere completely and utterly different. Yeah. But you have that geographical confidence. Oh, no, it's in the city.
Yes.
You know, my broker's office is next to the Bank of England. It actually makes no difference where the back office is situated. It matters where the money's gone. And invariably, you're giving people complete discretion. A lot of people are unaware of that. They buy into funds and they buy into various ideals. What they don't understand is that ideal can change based on human interaction. That the person that runs the fund can one day decide to run the fund in a different manner.
And that in running the fund in a different manner is not in any way, shape, or means illegal at all. That's his professional choice, knowledge, whatever. Yeah. Is that
it's a decision.
Right.
I think I can't remember who he worked for. There's maybe you shouldn't mention his name, so maybe I won't. But there was a guy only recently. He was the darling of fund management in the Telegraph and the Times. Virtually every Sunday, superstar. I think his fund dropped $1 billion. And when you read this, someone reads it in the newspaper sitting on the train. Wow, the fund dropped $1 billion. What we have to understand and remember, that money belonged to someone.
Yes.
It wasn't just a tick on a piece of paper. It actually belonged to, I don't know, to 1 million people, 2 million people. I don't know how many people were invested in that fund. Mm-hmm. But someone somewhere has got a very, very naughty letter, the day after saying, your 100,000 is now worth 5. We're sorry, pal, but jog on.
And nothing can happen to this guy.
I think he was investigated. I'll have to look it up. I'm pretty sure he was investigated, but there was no criminal proceedings or whatever. He got the market wrong. Now, why did he get the market wrong? Is his research people not so good? Did he have a bad day? I mean, no one really knows.
Or did he pocket the money? Because he put it elsewhere. This is what I'm thinking. I'm conscious, Pete, of years ago. I had something to do with Pablo Escobar, just in terms of narco-terrorism, and I was conscious of the amount of money this guy was earning. Basically, it's nigh on as much as the bloody Colombian gross national product. So this guy was putting his money as it went into Bank of Credit and Commerce International. Now, also, a bit later, I was looking at Libyans, okay? And they were putting the money in the Bank of Credit and Commerce Internationals because they were doing some, let's say, some naughty business. The External Security Organization of Libya, which is their intelligence service. So these sorts of monies were going into this bank to then be utilized for different reasons. One for moving drugs, and the other one for killing people under the stray dogs policy. Yeah. So for operations that they were doing. So the point I'm making is that's just two. There's loads of them. I mean, it could be all over, but they're going into something. Nobody knows where the money comes from, and it would appear that nobody seems to know where it goes. That's my point.
Yeah, well, no one really does know where it goes because it gets invested in. You know, it could a percentage of it could go to one of these high frequency traders on NASDAQ. You don't really know that that's where it is.
Yeah.
And you also don't know what liquidity they have. I mean, now with all the various anti-money laundering and risk assessment profiles that you have to go through when you're dealing with someone else's money, it does make it a lot harder for somebody to do what that guy did. I just looked, by the way, it was 3.7 billion, that he dropped. And he is opening a new fund. So he said he's sorry. I will send you the link so that you can see.
Probably still driving a Maybach. He's
he's not.
Hasn't dropped at all.
Yeah, but he won't be driving the Maybach, will he?
No, somebody's driving for him. Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
He's sitting in the back with the gin and tonic.
I'm thinking too small.
Exactly. Yeah, he's in the back with his G&T. But look at that, dropped 3.7 billion. And as I said, now when you deal with somebody's money, their attitude to risk is a big point of it. And you have to really analyze what somebody really wants out of their money. So it does take away, despite the story I've just told, it does take away an awful lot of that, going into a black hole. It still goes into a black hole. It's just it's a black hole that's more manufactured to fit your basis.
Gotcha. So as long as you warn somebody then that you might lose, then you're good to go.
Exactly. But and the biggest risk is liquidity. You know, if we all invest today, me, you, and 50 other people, for example, into a company we think is going to be a superstar, and it is a superstar, but if there's no buyers of the stock the other side, we can't sell it. And therein then lies what is the biggest disparity in the stock market of all, the difference between trading and the actual operational business. Because for the new companies, there is no relationship.
Right.
You see companies on the market valued at billions and billions. One of them is there's a cycle company. It's a
Peloton.
Peloton. There you go. I didn't know I could mention the name. So Peloton is valued at something like $10 billion. Therefore, that's more than other high street businesses that we would know.
Yes.
Now you're talking about a bike.
Yes.
You know, and its price earnings ratio. In other words, the amount of so price earnings ratio would be on somebody like Marks and Spencer might be 15, for example. I don't know this as a fact.
Sorry, Pete, that's a bit technical. Can you explain price earnings ratio? Sorry. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So for every single public company has a number attached to it called a PE, and a PE is the price earnings ratio of the company. Thus, if the company earns £1 million a year, and the company is valued at 15 million, that would give it a price earnings ratio of 15 times. Gotcha. So if I bought the stock today, if all of that money was delivered back to the company, which it wouldn't be because they buy new offices and they'd reinvest and they'd do whatever, but effectively it gives you the measure of the value of the business.
Yes.
Now, when I was a young trader, anything with a PE over 10 was a bit crazy. Right. Because that was, it becomes high risk. It becomes something that we're not really sure of. We're certainly going into the speculative end of the market. So now, as we sit here in 2022, company like Rio Tinto Zinc, or Rio Tinto as they're now called. So I think they're one of the biggest mining firms in the world.
Yes. Yeah.
They mine anything and everything and everywhere. I think the company's last look was worth about 70 billion.
Yeah.
But it's got a PE, a price earnings ratio of 6. And I know this because I'm invested in it. So a price earnings ratio of 6 means the first off that my dividend from that company will be high, but also it means that it's not really overly valued, because in 6 years' time they'll make enough money to, if they reinvested everything, to bring that back to earth, if you like.
Yes, yes.
Then you look at the new companies now that are out there, and Peloton being the example I was using. Peloton's PE recently, I think, was 80. 80. 80. 80. I'm trying to find it now, actually, as I'm talking to you. Yeah. And the market cap, so in other words, the value of the business, was just staggering amounts of money. And this is where the market has gone completely back underground. Because people
Who
are
makes
really
that evaluation is what you're basically saying. Who evaluates that?
And the market values it because they buy the stock. And someone will say, by the way, this is a stock you should buy, and people start buying it, and then the stock price goes up, and then therefore there becomes there's no correlation at that point between the operational business, the company that where people go to work every day and make a cycle, or a Tesla, or whatever it may be, and what really goes on in the market. I mean, Tesla, I just mentioned Tesla. Tesla's PE at one point, so its price earnings ratio, i.e. its value metric. Bear in mind, Rio Tinto, biggest mining firm in the world, got a metric of 6. Right now, Tesla's PE is 473. In October 2020, I'm reading this off a screen, it was 875.
Right.
Now, what is so is that business worth 100 times more than Rio Tinto?
I guess what they're saying, I mean, so, listeners can understand. I guess what they're saying is that Rio Tinto's bringing stuff out of the ground. You can see it. It moves along. And if everything crashed tomorrow, they've still got the bauxite or whatever else they're dragging out of the ground or whatever it is to sell on at some stage. With your Tesla, I guess it's an idea, really, because if it all went crazy tomorrow and people said, do you know what, electric cars are great, but the batteries are doing more damage to the earth than anything else, and everybody said, oh, we don't want to touch that, because a hydrogen car's come out and it just uses water and it costs nothing, then I guess it could crash tomorrow. Is that basically how you do the evaluation?
Yeah, I mean, and people are saying, well, if Tesla is the new Ford, and therefore we will all be driving this understands that there's going to be no competition, which there is competition.
Yes.
And they're just going to keep on going, which who knows. But for a company like Tesla to be worth $1 trillion, and someone like Rio Tinto to be worth less than 1/10 of that, and these are isolated examples. I'll give you examples all day long. Because there are so many of them. And it's back to that black hole. It's back to that misunderstanding of what the market is all about, because people actually don't think that Tesla is overvalued. People don't think of the value of Tesla. They will think of the price of the share. So Tesla shares today are, I don't know what they are, $400 a share. Sorry, they're not. I just looked at $1,000 a share. People don't think that it's $1,000 a share. They think it's going to go to 1,200, and they buy it.
Yeah.
But that's got no reflection to what the company is actually doing every day.
So this is how crypto is in the same market, isn't it? Because it's
exactly the same.
They're basically looking and saying, you know what, it was worth $10 6 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever, Bitcoin. And so actually, true story, somebody said to me I think it was about 2013, this Bitcoin, you want to come in on this Bitcoin stuff? And I think it was about $10. That's why I'm saying that. I think it was $10.
Really?
And I said, no, this is some sort of Ponzi scheme. It'll get to a certain level, everybody will take the money away and jobs are good. Yeah. Well, who's the clown now? Yeah.
Well,
Who's
at least I know now why you never joined the finance business.
Exactly. Exactly, my friend. One's too dumb and the other one's too safe. So those are the two reasons for it. So that was me out of the game. You know, if I'd put £1,000 in that game then when I was told, can you imagine?
It is staggering, isn't it? And it's that same sort of thing that we're talking about. People are not seeing. You know, people are buying Bitcoin now at $40,000 a unit, but I don't think they're buying it because they have massive belief in the product or the future of cryptos. They're buying it because they think they can sell it for 20% more.
Correct.
In the short term.
Absolutely correct.
And that is the biggest thing. And when you see these price earnings ratios in America, go back to my PE conversation of 800 and 500 and all these crazy numbers, there is a disparity between the real operational business that we all, or some of us, or half of us go to work for every day, and the market value. And another example, because I just pulled it up on my screen, Mercado Libre is a big South American Amazon, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
And they're struggling a little bit. They've lost. I don't think they've ever made money. They may have. So yeah. Excuse me if I've got that a bit wrong. But their PE is 700, and their value on the market today, as I sit here, and the stock's down quite heavily. The market capitalization, in other words, the value of the business based on number of shares in issue multiplied by the stock price, today is 55 billion. And to put that in perspective, Marks and Spencer is 4 billion.
Yeah, incredible.
And Marks and Spencer is deemed as overvalued. So, you know, so we get into this crazy world in the market that the correlation between what the company does and how much it makes actually has got further and further away from the stock price and what people invest in, because everybody's a speculator. Everybody knows someone who bought Bitcoin or Tesla or Facebook, and you know, the amount of times you see on blogs, you know, if you'd have put £1,000 into Facebook, it would be worth this. The reality is, I mean, you mentioned before about Bitcoin. If someone put £1,000 a day into something new and it went to 2,000 or 3 or 4, you'd probably sell it.
Take your money out. Correct. Yeah, correct.
So very rarely are these stories actually true in practice. But what they do is they bring more money into the market. Yeah. Because people believe it, which forces the stock price higher, which means people make profit.
So therefore, Pete, let me put to you what's a very, very, very senior politician once said to me. I can go as far as to say that the person was a prime minister, no gender, no nothing. And the person once said to me, asked me whether I was happy with what I was doing in my work in the secret intelligence and national security arena. And I said, yeah, I am. So I said, let me put that question to you. Are you happy with what you've done and what you're doing? And the person turned around, extremely senior person in a country, the United Kingdom, that, you know, is one of the leading countries, regardless of us leaving the EU and all the rest of it, one of the leading countries in the world. By the way, I'm not for us leaving the EU, but, you know, we did. But still, there's some element of power, that lesser than what it was before, in my belief, but that's the way it is. This person said, no, I'd rather have been in the banking game. Now, that said to me, the power doesn't lie with these guys who are at the top of who we think are at the top of the game, sitting there running countries. The power clearly lies with these guys and when they say banking, they don't mean banking as you know, Pete, they mean your game and all the others. They lie with the people making money. It's now clear to me that actually the people with power are those who make the money. So what does that say for the control systems in geopolitics? Who really controls it? Is it Jamie Dimon, or their equivalent in China, or their equivalent in Japan, or in the UK? Or is it, you know, your prime minister? Because at the end of the day, and I've seen this with my own eyes now, at the end of the day, when these guys, let me put it a different way. to explain that. When a United Kingdom Prime Minister, and I'd drop that all the way down to about a United Kingdom Home Secretary at least, maybe a little bit further down, when they leave politics, they've got a ready-made money-making process, giving talks and so on and so forth. You imagine you're the Prime Minister of Zimbabwe. When you leave, where's your money-making process? Where do you make money? Who's interested whether you can talk about what Zimbabwe is doing? Nobody. So what that means is, yes, I can be democratic in the United Kingdom and say, oh, I'm voted out now, I'll leave, because I know my money stream. And in fact, somebody I did know, General Powell said to me, now it's time to make money, right? When he left office, I was talking to him, right? Great guy. Now it's time to make money, because he'd served and he'd not made any money. He'd made money from me, but not money at your level. So he said, I want to make money now. So he was doing his talks, and General Powell speaking for the Washington Speakers Bureau, and I think he was getting in the region of $250,000, $500,000 a talk. Okay. So he's making money. So that's what he's saying. Now it's time to make money. Right. What does this Zimbabwe guy do? So what he basically says is, I'm not leaving power. I'm holding on to power, because if I leave, I'm Joe Soap.
Or I'll get shot or something.
Exactly.
For crossing somebody else.
Exactly. So it all plays into the same line. It's the people making money. So that guy I was talking about, he was making money because he's an ex-prime minister, or she was an ex-prime minister. They could make money, but they still were not at the level of the guys in the money system.
Well, I'll tell you a little tale on that sort of supports what you've said and takes it all the way back to the beginning again. When I was trading the market, i.e. on the market floor, I got an order off a guy to buy over 10% of a UK public company, a household name that is still trading right now, a major, one of the top 10. Mm-hmm. I read the order. It was handed to me by my runner. I had to run back to him to say, you've got the numbers wrong. I said, this must be half the company. He said, it's not, it's 11%. They're going to make a full bid. Now, I'm a 19-year-old on the stock market with a £400 million order in my hand, thinking, oh, okay, here we go. And I daren't do it because there's still the stock market, or the British stock market anyway, still very much is my word is my bond.
Yes.
Very, very honourable trade. Not so much in other parts of the world. Word is my bond in America does not even exist. Sorry if you have any American readers, listeners who are in the market, but it doesn't. It's, whoever's quickest, fastest, hard luck, you lost. Yeah. So I walked over to the engineering pit to start trading this stock, and I got cold feet. I thought, this is too much. So I went back, I called the office. I said, I've got an order from Mr. X to buy this. They said, yes, we know. I said, I need to understand that he's got the money. I knew who the guy was, but I didn't really know. And I'd never known anyone with that much money in my life anyway. So this was astronomical. I said, so what's the gig? And the lady said, you're authorized to trade it. I still didn't even believe her. So she got me into somebody else. I said, look, I'm about to trade something here that I don't know if it's legitimate. I don't know what the rules are. We're going to try and buy over 9.9, which means that we've got to force a full bid up to 29.9. This is not just a trade. This is 2 years of work for 500 people. Right. And she said, we have his collateral. And his collateral was a UK county. And the UK county is also part owned by a member of the royal family.
Yeah, okay.
And so you figure out which one it is.
Yeah, I got it.
And this had to get parliamentary approval. Mm-hmm. It got parliamentary approval in about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
and I assume royal family approval. So then, with all of these approvals, it made the Financial Times mystery bidder. We actually only got 7.6% in day one. Yeah. Took us a week to fill. It made the FT, and then the guy almost, I would say, green mailed them because he sold it all back to them for a profit. But I was told the royal family were involved because it would affect their holding in this particular county. The government 100% were involved. They had to approve the trade.
Yeah.
This is a British national industry that was public.
Gotcha.
And that sort of comes all the way back to what you were talking about.
Yes.
With your ex-minister, he or she, ex-prime minister, he or she. Ultimately, the person that was buying this entity got government approval in a minute, and thus I would imagine he had an awful lot of sway rather than the other way around.
Exactly. And this is the problem, I think, and I think that what we're now finding, because I guess also the other thing is, I don't think, you tell me, Pete, I don't think these people have any loyalty to a particular place, do they? Many of them, because they can live anywhere, can't they? So does it really, I mean, they might like living in the United States, in Manhattan, say. They might like living in, I don't know, Geneva or somewhere. But of course, they can move anytime. So does it really matter where they live? Does it really matter who goes down the Swanee? I guess it matters more if America goes down the Swanee than if, let's say, let's keep with Zimbabwe. If Zimbabwe goes down the Swanee, they don't care. But does it really matter? As long as the money's being made, as long as they're living well. So this is what I mean. There is no allegiance. So when we don't know who the real leaders are, is that not problematic?
Well, it is problematic, isn't it? And putting that back into the relevance of my business, someone comes out with, let's say, just to stick to Zimbabwe, nothing against them or for them, but just to stick to it. News breaks that such and such in Zimbabwe has done something. Within 5 minutes maximum, someone will have analyzed all the stocks that are invested in Zimbabwe. Rio Tinto is a good example. I'm sure they're in Zim
Rio
somewhere.
Tinto in there, yeah.
And they'll be selling them if the news is potentially catastrophic for the country. If it's going to make the news, if it's going to make the headlines on CNN, on Sky News, on BBC, they will immediately be dumping the stock left, right, and center, because they know that potentially that's going to be something that Rio Tinto or whoever else is going to have to make a statement in their accounts to say, we are exposed to commercial risk, political risk, in Zimbabwe. And these people that are going to trade it fast, there's no thought or concern for what the real ramifications are. It's just troubles in Zim, dump it.
Whether a million people lose their employment or whatever is immaterial.
Yeah. Or the government gets ousted, there's a military coup, there's blood on the streets. Now, all we're concerned over our Shabli is, did you get out enough of that stock?
I mean, I laugh because it's frightening. Not because it's funny, but because these are people's lives.
Yep.
It's
and the more look at when the world collapsed in 2008. You could see, no one could see it going that bad, because you didn't think that Bear Stearns and Merrill Lynch were not telling the truth. You assumed that these highly paid executives with positions of power were telling the truth, whereas they all were not. But the way that mortgage business was going, if you looked at it, everyone knew the mortgage business was going to collapse.
Yes.
Other than the people that it hurt.
Yes.
The people that it hurt, that it destroyed, had no clue what was going on, because a salesman comes along in a shiny suit. I'm going to fix all your problems. There's a massive case here in Spain where I am right now. An Icelandic bank were lending money. I think you and I had this conversation a couple of years ago, Carlton. Yep. They were lending money hand over fist at 6% or 4%, sorry. And if you could stand up straight and sign your name, you got a mortgage. That was really the two criteria. I don't even think you had to stand up straight, and you could probably print with your thumb rather than write. And they would give you a mortgage, let's say €500,000 apartment or house, call it a house. They give you 550,000 to pay all the fees. So people were walking into properties with net cost nil. Thus, any sentiment is nil, because it hasn't been painful. It hasn't hurt them to get there.
Yeah.
But Landsbanki were throwing the money out at 4% or 4.2, but they were picking it up out of bonds that they sold themselves at 3.
Right, that's what I never understood, you see. So they were already making on it, even if you defaulted, as a sense.
Yeah, they didn't care. And when they'd sold enough, so let's say they sold 100 million of these mortgages at 4, they wrap it all up and sell it on to somebody else. And that somebody else makes your interest rate 4.25%, for example.
Yeah.
So the risk is just being passed from pillar to post. But when it starts to fall and people are saying, I can't afford this, the bank they've sold it to don't pay Landsbanki their 4. Landsbanki don't pay their provider their 3. Their provider don't pay their provider their 2.8 or whatever the numbers were at the time. I can't quite recall. And the entire collateralized mortgage situation just fell to pieces. Yeah. And they said the only people that didn't know it was going to happen were actually the people that it affected.
Right.
Because it didn't really affect anybody else.
Yep.
Other than the fact that all the banks were shorted the second it broke. Everyone's selling Bank of America, HSBC, Barclays faster than you can get out the door. But they're only selling it to buy it back again tomorrow.
Because they thought tomorrow it'd be cheaper. Yeah. What a game this is. Pete, listen, I mean, you won't believe it. We have gone way over my normal time. And as I often say, is that one of the things with the show is that I make it bite-sized so people can listen to it on the train or whatever else and get educated and entertained at the same time, which you clearly have done. But we've gone way over the timings. Pete, I mean, if you would, could I have you back? Because at some stage, because I tell you what you've just touched the surface on this thing, but you've educated, I guess, many a person now with what you've said, because people just don't understand it. So you've provided that understanding. So if you would come back on some occasion, would you do that?
Yeah, of course. Always a pleasure, Carlton. Always a pleasure.
Fantastic. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, today what you've heard is how the real world works. So, and that's no exaggeration. This is how the people that really make the world function, how it's worked, how it's thought through, how money, because that's what it's all about, is work. I mean, next time when I have Pete on, what I want to ask him actually are things like, will crypto change this? Or will it just go back into the same people's hands who had it before because they were quick enough to buy crypto up? I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to do it now, but that's one of the things that I want to ask about, because, is this now where we sit forever and a day? Or is it moving around? Pete, listen, thank you very much for your time.
You're more than welcome.
It's been brilliant. I tell you what, I've learned so much. So I'm guessing that everybody's learned. And hopefully we get you back in the next season, so in about 8 episodes time or something like that, so we can learn more from you, mate. Thank you very much. It's been absolutely fantastic.
Cheers, Carlton.
All the best.
Very much.
See you again. Ladies and gentlemen, see you again next week. Bye-bye.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4 or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe for free.
Here is a working class spy telling his stories, the secrets, the lives of spies. Feel free to message Carlton King on all socials and give this show 5 stars on Apple iTunes and subscribe so you never miss a single episode. For your ears only.
I was a member of Her Majesty's Secret Intelligence Service.